Hi guys, I'm Kevin Secours, and in this video I'm going to be providing you with 9 essential tips for improving your success against a blade. Tip number 1 is perhaps the most important. It is that while experience is important, common sense is king. Common sense matters more than experience. And what I mean by this is that there are many people out there with experience in knife work. Some people like myself have trained for decades in various systems that address the knife. Some people, like myself, have worked in professional domains. I've worked as a bouncer, as a doorman. I worked in personal and private security. I have encountered live blade on numerous occasions when I was empty-handed. So that gives me a certain amount of experience. But no matter what my experience is, don't ever let someone's pedigree replace your common sense. There are as many people out there, if not more, with profound real-world experience who are teaching absolute suicidal bunk, as there are people that have experience who have positively learned from it. There can be many reasons. There are people with real-world experience who are charlatans and just looking to take your money. There are people out there who simply have experience in one domain but perhaps never faced a knife empty-handed. There are other people who have domain experience in grappling or in boxing, but again, never against a knife. There are some people that have had actual violent encounters with knives and who were lucky in those events, and so they come out with a skewed perception. There are others who get traumatized by it, and as such they try to create psychological distance between themselves and the reality of violence, and they try to put a more polite and a more civil face on violence by doing these ideological, more philosophical takes on how to defend against the knife. At the end of all things, experience can help, but it doesn't guarantee or replace common sense. So you as the individual are always more important than any governing system or any so-called expert's opinion. Trust your gut, make sure it makes sense first. Tip number 2 is not as self-evident for some as it is for others, and that is that you need to train. There are many people out there who will tell you that no matter what happens, there's nothing you can do empty-handed against a knife. Run, grab a chair, or get out of town. And I understand the sentiment behind it. I understand even the despair, because when you train realistically against the knife, it can be disheartening. But at the end of the day, guys, we need to have some other options. The 16th century samurai Miyamoto Musashi said that it's doubtful that anyone ever truly achieves mastery. But leaders, generals, warriors, they need to have some sense of what mastery is, and they need to try, to the best of their ability, to pass it on to others. That's how I look at knife. Knife defense, all the experts of the world are fundamentally putting together a puzzle in the dark. They're doing their best to make sense of the reality, that Jackson Pollock chaos of a real-life situation. The fact is, knife defense is a bleak predicament. It is extremely difficult for even the most skilled to get out. I've survived many encounters, and yes, there was some skill involved, but I made my share of mistakes, and I always say that it's only because I'm lucky that I'm here. I know other people that were more skilled than me that weren't as lucky, and they're not here. And that's the simple reality. It is a bleak predicament, but you need to train. You need to train in scenario. You need to drill and isolate. You need to experiment. You must have something other than just the idea of running in your arsenal, in your toolkit, because you don't always have an option. Tip number 3 is that you need to train yourself to run. Now you might be thinking, wait a minute, you just said we need to train and train and train how to fight. Now you're saying train how to run. Well, like most experts, I definitely agree that the minute you see an opening wherein you can escape a lethal threat like a knife or avoid a fight of any type, you should do so. You should always prioritize escaping. I've seen so many people needlessly get injured because they volunteered for a fight that didn't need to happen. There were exit doors and they didn't take them. But where I'm a little bit different is that knowing that you should run is not the same as actually training yourself to run. If you want to reliably have the reflex and the skills to choose the right opening wherein to run, you need to train yourself to do it. That means your scenarios have to include learning to run at the first sight of a knife. They have to include how to run once the knife is drawn. They need to include how to engage and then learn how and when it's best to escape. Sometimes you'll engage and you see it's a losing, diminishing return. You're not doing well. You go in, you try to trap, it's failing. Push and run sooner rather than later. This is one of the hardest things to do because once we engage, we have this repeating circuit, this loop that we get lost in, where our pattern continually gets interrupted and we keep reaching for the knife and flailing until we die or get seriously injured. So we need to also train ourselves to run in the midst of it. It's never too early to run. It's never too late to run, but you need to have this in your simulations. It may not always be possible to run, so tip number 4 is do anything that you can to maintain distance. Having something as simple as an object between you and the aggressor helps you maintain distance. Stay away. Avoid being taunted, baited, and drawn towards the weapon. So often, all we do is train defenses, blocking, and disarms, and in doing that, we are at some level training ourselves to volunteer for knife range. We do not want to do anything to allow that aggressor to come in close. Use strong verbal commands. Keep your hands up and defining your space. Use footwork to maintain and maximize distance, but do everything in your power to avoid allowing that range to disappear. Tip number 5 is to train your eyes to see danger sooner. Train your eyes in all of your drilling, in all of your scenario work, and in all of your daily life to constantly be scanning. Good tactical vision means being aware of everything without fixating on anything. Specifically, notice the eyes, the emotion, the use of the eyes, where they're looking and what they're looking at, and keep an awareness of your aggressor or potential aggressor's hands at all times. The hands are essential. They will let you know if they are trying to access a weapon, if they're concealing it, or if they're already wielding it. Tip number 6 is to train yourself to talk your way out of danger. As a doorman, I was a very small man and I used my mouth to get out of way more fights than I ever used my fist to get out of. Train yourself to empathize, to understand, to associate. Train yourself to mirror your aggressor's speech. Train yourself to diffuse anger through the correct use of vocabulary and tone and pacing. If you have never seen it, guys, I strongly encourage you to check out my digital download on 20 Steps to Verbal Mastery. It is a comprehensive foundation for the absolute essentials, the must-dos in any verbal dynamic. Tip number 7 is to use absolutely any found object in your environment to help even out the odds a little bit. This can include taking off your belt and using it as a whip or a flail to maintain and maximize your distance. Attack to the face, attack to the arms, whip, keep it spinning in front of you to maintain maximum distance, a good physically painful barrier between you and the aggressor. It can include taking off your backpack or your baseball cap. It can include lifting up chairs and using them as shields or to spear and to spike. It can even include environmental factors like tables and chairs and doorways that you walk behind or position yourself correctly behind in order to make it more difficult for your aggressor to attack you. Tip number 8, if you must engage at close range with a knife and you manage to latch on a grip, teach yourself, train yourself to strike without relinquishing control. Many systems teach you to relinquish control of one hand, and this invariably places you in an awkward position, hitting across your body, or else hugely sacrifices control of the weapon. Some even teach not to neutralize the knife arm at all and to simply go in boxing and striking. Now, this is possible. Anything could work, but in my personal experience, it is far more likely, both in real-world encounters and in all the vast amounts of pressure testing and scenario training that I've done, to latch on and to control that weapon. So what that leaves us is the ability to attack using head spears, which are extremely devastating, into the face, neck, throat, chest area, using knees anywhere. It need not only be the groin, it can be to the thighs, in the front, back, side, anywhere. Knees are devastating. We can use the foot to provide oblique or instep kicks to the shin, scraping the shins, hitting the shins, stepping on the shins. We can stomp on the feet. By all means, if we have more advanced skills like hip bumps or leg sweeps, leg hooks, or even side kicks and round kicks, use them if you are able to make them work under honest pressure. But train the majority of the time to strike without relinquishing control of the weapon. And finally, I want you to remember, most of all, why it is you're defending yourself. We often term this drill putting the self in self-defense, and we say that there is nothing that matters more than you, the individual. At the outset, I said common sense trumps experience and that you matter more than any system. But we need to remember that you matter more than any insult, more than any challenge, more than any ego trap. You matter more than any object, any amount of material wealth. So often we volunteer for aggression because of these ego traps, because we want to keep our money, protect a family heirloom. But we're not talking about protecting our family's physical safety. We're talking about things that are far more tentative, far less essential. You, your loved ones, your lives are what matters most. And you need to ultimately remember that in any training. This includes even the level of aggression that you're choosing in your response. Very often people have this very natural desire to finish the encounter. How dare this person attack me with a knife? I'm going to finish them. But they simply stay too long. They stay too long in the encounter trying to achieve some more pleasing, more satisfying ending to something that ultimately may never be satisfying. Real-world encounters are messy. They're sloppy. They don't always have clean finishes. There are no winners. There are survivors. So you want to remember that you are the reason you are fighting. Your loved ones are the reason you are fighting, and that you matter more than any other ideal or any other emotion that you have. And you need to get yourself out of harm's way at any cost. There you have it, guys. 9 very hard-earned and essential tips that will massively help to maximize your survival odds against the blade. If you like this video, please do like, please do share it, and if you aren't already subscribed to my channel. We're going to be including a lot of new content regularly here, trying to get new material up every single week. If you enjoyed this knife material, you might want to check out some of my other downloads on surviving rapid knife attacks, our certification module on knife defense, and our Paladin Press volume on weapon defense. As always, I thank you for your feedback, your questions, and your suggestions, and until next time, I look forward to seeing you on the mat.